Have you noticed how your mind can become an invisible prison, a maze where you keep walking around in circles, trapped in incessant thoughts that seem to lead nowhere? You worry, analyze, doubt, and question everything at the same time. Nights become long and days exhausting. Mental tiredness seems to accumulate while you desperately seek a way out that does not seem to exist. But what if there was a simple way to calm the mental whirlwind and finally find a peaceful space within it? Stoicism teaches us that we do not need to be hostages of our own minds. On the contrary, we have the power to choose which thoughts we cultivate and which ones we let go. In this video, you will discover 10 simple and effective strategies to detoxify your mind, reduce anxiety, and stop thinking too much once and for all. Before we begin, write in the comments, "Today I choose clarity, calm, and balance," because life is too short to live trapped in your own head. Number 1. Do your attention, not your thoughts. Have you ever felt as if you were being dragged by your own mind, as a boat adrift in open sea, without rudder, without direction, at the mercy of the waves of thoughts? They arise from nothing, multiply, mingle, and when you try to silence them, they seem to shout even louder. It is a constant internal noise, an invisible pressure that exhausts you even when everything around you is silent. What most people don't realize, because no one has taught us, is that the problem is not in the excess of thoughts, but in the excess of attention we give them. Thinking too much is a symptom of a loose focus. The mind, like a wild horse, needs firm reins. If you let it run loose, it takes you to places you would never choose to go. But if you learn to drive it, then you can cross into the toughest landscapes with firmness and lucidity. This is where the fundamental lesson of Stoicism comes in. You don't need to fight with your thoughts to have peace. You just need to learn to redirect your attention. Epictetus went straight to the point when he wrote, "No person is free if he doesn't own himself." And being owner of himself starts right there, by being the guardian of his own attention. Imagine that your mind is a house with many windows. In each window, an image is projected, a memory that hurts you, a concern about the future, a judgment, a comparison, a desire. You cannot prevent these images from appearing, but you can choose which ones you will look at, and for how long. You can even close some windows if you want. Inner freedom is not the absence of thoughts, but the autonomy not to be governed by them. From the moment you realize that you do not need to give audience to every thought that passes, something changes within you. The mind begins to calm down, not because it has become empty, but because you have failed to feed it with what harms you. When you start to notice that you are sinking into repetitive thoughts, those that come back like a scratched disc, feel the body. Bring your attention to the now. Look around. Feel the ground. Bring your senses back to reality. Because overthinking is most of the time getting lost in places where life is not happening. Life is not in what if, nor in why was it so. Life happens in what you do with now. And now can only be accessed by attention. When you focus on the present, thoughts lose volume. The mind does not disappear, but it repositions itself. There is a practice that can help you. Every time an intrusive thought arises, ask yourself, does this thought serve me or sabotage me? If it serves you, observe it with gentle attention. If it sabotages you, let it go. Do not fight with it. Just say internally, "You are not useful to me now." And then focus your attention on something real, tangible, concrete. A book, a task, a deep breath. In time, it becomes a habit. Your mind educates itself. Your thoughts lose strength. You gain lightness. Mastering your attention is the simplest and most profound way to start mental detoxification. And the most beautiful of all is that power is already in you. You just need to remember that repeatedly until it becomes natural. Because at the end of the day, being free, truly, is this: choosing with awareness where your inner gaze rests, and from there, letting what you deserve to grow flourish. Number 2, the quality of what you think defines what you feel. Have you ever stopped to listen to the tone of the voices inside your head? Are they calming you or sabotaging you? When no one is around and everything silence is around you, your mind whispers, "What?" Because it is there, in this intimate and raw instant, that you begin to realize whether you are living in peace or just pretending balance. The truth is simple, but often forgotten. The thoughts build the world that you see, and what you see shapes what you feel. A chaotic mind creates a chaotic life, even if on the outside everything seems in order. You can have stability, comfort, even success, but if the thoughts that inhabit you are gray, your soul will be a winter that does not pass. Marcus Aurelius wrote with precision, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." And what does that mean in practice? It means that thinking clearly is as essential as breathing. That feeding your mind with words of fear, comparison, or judgment is the same as gradually poisoning yourself. One sip at a time, every day. The problem is that you get used to it. If you get used to waking up already worried, sleeping already exhausted, thinking all the time about what can go wrong, what is missing, what others have, and without realizing it, that noise becomes the background sound of your existence, a sound that doesn't let you relax, that never shuts down, that convinces you that you are always behind, always falling short, always owing something to someone. But there is a way out. And this exit begins with an almost subversive act, observing what you think. Not to control every thought, this is impossible, but to choose which of them you will let in, which you will sit at the table, and which you will simply let through. The quality of your thoughts is like the quality of the air you breathe. No matter how much you try to ignore, it is affecting you. If you are contaminated, your vitality disappears, your lucidity goes out. But if you are clean, every inspiration becomes light, and you start living with more space inside. You want a practical example? When something frustrates you, you can think, "It always happens to me." And that thought creates a feeling of impotence, which generates more frustration, and the cycle repeats itself. But if you think it's uncomfortable, but it's a chance to react differently, your body responds with another kind of energy. You don't deny pain, but you don't give into it either. You choose the thought that sustains your presence. It is at this point that Stoicism finds its strength. It does not ask you to be cold or apathetic, but that you are selective. Not with the world, but with what you allow within you. Your mind is a temple, not an emotional garbage dump. And the more you clean the space, the more you realize how heavy it was to carry everything that was not yours. So if you want to stop thinking too much, start by cleaning up the quality of what you think. Write, observe, question. Replace internal words like failure, blame, shame by learning, responsibility, growth. Not as an escape, but as a reconstruction of the foundation on which you interpret your life. Remember, every emotion is born of a thought, and every thought is a choice, whether conscious or not. From today on, may your choices be calmer, more compassionate, more true with whom you really want to become. Because your peace is not in the silence of the mind, but in the harmony of what you cultivate within it. Number 3. What afflicts you only afflicts you because you agree. Perhaps you remember a seemingly ordinary day that has gone completely astray because of a crossed word, a crooked look, a veiled criticism. Sometimes it's just a misinterpreted and ready gesture. The heart accelerates. The mind goes off. The day goes dark inside. And all because of something someone said, did, or simply because your mind decided to interpret as a threat what maybe was just wind. But what if I told you that most of the things that hurt you don't have that power for themselves, that they only hit you because, on some level, you let them? Seneca left no room for doubt when he wrote, "Man is disturbed not by things but by the opinion he has of them." And this is one of the hardest and most liberating lessons of Stoicism. You do not suffer for what happens, but for the story you create about what happens. This is not about denying emotions, pretending that nothing affects you, or becoming insensitive. It is about understanding that there is a space, even if small, between what happens and how you react. And it is in this interval that your freedom resides. What you do with this space is what determines whether your day will continue light, or whether you will be dragged to the bottom of the well for something that perhaps did not deserve so much weight. Have you ever stopped to observe how the same situation can cause completely different reactions in different people? A critique that paralyzes someone can motivate another. A term that sinks one frees the other. The fact is the same. What changes is the lens, the narrative, the opinion. And here is the raw truth. When you feel constantly affected, it is because there are still open wounds within you, insecurities that seek, without realizing, confirmations of its value. And any gesture, word, or absence can be interpreted as attack, rejection, or sign of failure. But this does not concern reality, but rather the way you have learned to see yourself. Mental detoxification begins with the detachment of the need to validate everything you feel as absolute truth. Not every thought is reliable. Not every emotion is just. And above all, not all pain is proportional to what caused it. Try, the next time you feel affected, stop for a moment and ask yourself, is this situation serious? Or is it my interpretation that is making you unbearable? This simple pause may be the antidote to an emotional avalanche. This also applies to conflicts. Sometimes you insist on winning a discussion that didn't even have to happen. It responds to a provocation just to prove a point. But the truth is that answering is not always a sign of strength. Often, the real power is in not reacting, in looking inside, and realizing that your peace is worth more than your reason. When you understand this, you begin to choose your battles more wisely. Stop spending energy on what you cannot control and start taking better care of what really matters. Your clarity, your calm, your integrity. Free yourself from the idea that everything that hits you is the fault of the world. Not everything that hurts was intentional. And even when it is, you still have the power to decide, does it deserve to bring me down? Does it deserve my energy? Most of the time, the answer will be no, Joey. The opinion you have of things is the filter that everything goes through. And this filter may be dirty with old traumas, inherited insecurities, unreal expectations. Clearing it is a daily work. But it is also the most direct path to a light, resilient, and above all, free mind. Because in the end, what really upsets you is not the world. It's the way you learn to see it. And the good news is, you can learn to see different from now on. Number 4. Back to essential as antidote against excess. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by things you don't even know why you do? A schedule full of commitments that don't nourish you. An accelerated routine that exhausts you. A constant search for more. More answers, more control, more assurances. We live in a world where excess disguises itself as progress, and where complexity has become synonymous with importance. But what is it costing you? The human mind was not made to digest so much at the same time. And every excessive stimulus steals a little of its presence, of its clarity, of its peace. It is as if we were trying to drink from a fountain overflowing mud. The more we put in, the less we see with sharpness. And here's the Stoic proposal. Return to the essentials. Because it is in the essentials that stillness dwells. Musonio Rufo, one of the great masters of Stoicism, wrote, "The closer we get to nature, the more we get away from anxiety." That is not an ecological suggestion. It is an existential lesson. To return to nature is also to return to its nature, to what is simple, to what is true. When you reconnect to what matters, an honest gesture, a deep breath, a walk without haste, you begin to realize how much you were intoxicated with distractions. The excess of information, tasks, expectations, all of this acts like a thick cloud over your mind, preventing you from clearly seeing what you feel and what you need. This is why you often feel tired without having done anything physically exhausting. Tiredness comes not only from the body, it comes above all from the accumulation of thoughts that lead you nowhere, from the excess of choices that do not belong to you, from the charge of being everything to everyone, all the time. To return to the essential is, therefore, an act of rebellion against the culture of excess. It is to say no to what distracts you, even if everyone says yes. It is to silence the noise of comparison, compulsive productivity, external validation. It is to look inward and ask honestly, what is indispensable to me? What really makes sense? And here comes the hardest: to let go. To let go of what occupies space, but does not fill. From what sounds important, but it is just noise. It takes courage, because the essential does not scream, does not demand, does not impose. The essential is subtle, and so easy to ignore. But when you find it again, everything changes. The world remains the same. Routine may even remain the same. But you begin to inhabit your life in another way. Start breathing slower, talking more intently, feeling time passing, and not just watching it run. And if you want a practical path, choose, every day, a moment of quietness, 5 minutes of silence, a task done without distraction, a space of the house without useless objects, conversation without cell phone on the table. Not because it is beautiful, but because it is necessary. Because the excess does not cease alone, it needs to be interrupted. Mental detoxification is not only done within the mind. It starts with the choices you make outside of it. What you consume, what you tolerate, what you believe is essential. And when you find that you need much less than you thought, a new kind of freedom is born. The freedom to carry no more than it is yours. In the end, you don't need more stimulation. You need more space. And the essentials, the essentials, always fit in silence. Number 5, you become what you allow to enter. Have you noticed that often it is not what happens in the world that wears you out, but what you allow to enter your unfiltered mind? The notification that changes your mood, the comparison that knocks you down, the flood of voices saying who you should be, what you should have, how you should live. The result of this is a tiredness that does not come from the body, but from the soul. It is not exaggeration to say that we live in a time of mental intoxication, not because of the lack of options, but because of the excess of stimuli. Everything blinks, calls, demands, wants your attention, as if your mind were a public square where anyone can scream. And the problem is that you, without realizing it, have let these voices in. And what comes in shapes. What shapes remains. Aristoteles warned us with timeless precision. It is only poor who wants more than he needs. And what is this unreasonable desire but a direct reflection of what we consume without consciousness? When you feed your mind with excess, it begins to believe that it is always lacking. This is how anxiety is born. Not of reality, but of the illusion that you should be somewhere else, being another person, living another story. Everything you contemplate becomes part of what you are. If you spend hours seeing perfect lives on social networks, you begin to think that your life is insufficient. If you hear complaints and judgments daily, your mind becomes critical and negative. If you surround yourself with futility, your thinking weakens. It is inevitable. But the opposite is also true. If you contemplate silence, you begin to hear your own inner voice. If you read something that expands, your vision expands. If you expose yourself to beauty, a music, a landscape, a gentle gesture, your heart begins to remember that there is a lighter rhythm of living. Detoxifying the mind starts there, limiting excess. as a demanding host who does not open the door of the house to anyone. You have no control over everything that happens out there, but you have the power to decide what comes in. That is more than discipline. It is respect for yourself. Stop for a moment and ask yourself, what have I often contemplated? Does it strengthen me or make me sick? It brings me closer to who I want to be or disconnects me from my essence. These questions, asked sincerely, can be the beginning of a true internal reconfiguration. The mind, when respected, blooms. When exposed to excess, it gets sick. You don't need to run away from the world. You just need to learn to filter out what it deserves from you. And the rule is simple. What disturbs you more than it teaches you does not deserve your time. What causes you more desire than peace does not deserve your look. What feeds the noise and not the inner silence does not deserve space in your day. Your soul is becoming something right now. The question is, what have you let it contemplate? Number 6. Self-domain is disguised freedom of silence. Have you ever felt that urge to respond immediately when someone provokes you? Or that almost uncontrollable will to justify every choice, to explain your emotions, to prove that you are right? Most of us have grown up thinking that reacting is synonymous with force, that responding immediately is a sign of intelligence or power. But it is not. In fact, it is often the opposite of that. To react without thinking is to give up the axis itself. It is to deliver the center of your being into the hands of someone who, perhaps, does not even deserve this space. True strength dwells in pause, in the space between stimulus and response. That is where self-control is born, that silent, almost invisible quality, which Stoics considered one of the noblest virtues. Heracles firmly said, "He is not free who has no power over himself." That phrase carries a serene weight, almost like an old sentence. If you do not control your reactions, someone or something will always do this for you. And that is all but freedom. We often confuse self-control with repression. We believe that those who are silent are canceling, that those who do not fight are cowering. But there is a huge difference between nullifying and restraining themselves. To cancel is to cease to exist. To contend is to exist more intensely, but under own command. Think of how many times you said something you didn't want, just because you were angry. How many decisions were made in the heat of an emotion that passed minutes later, leaving a trail of consequences? Now think of how many of these situations could have been different if you had taken a deep breath before acting. A deep breath can save a relationship. A conscious silence can prevent a disaster. Self-control is not only useful, it is liberating. When you learn not to react to everything, you begin to realize how much you wasted your energy on small things. You stop living in a state of constant alertness and begin to inhabit your own calm. You find that you don't need to win discussions to be at peace. You don't need to explain yourself to be whole. That not every criticism deserves response. Not every external urgency is an internal emergency. The detoxification of the mind necessarily passes through the silence of automatic reactions, through the decision to be less predictable, less impulsive, less reactive, and more present, more lucid, more self-owner. Practice the voluntary delay of the answer. When you feel like blowing up, wait. When the criticism comes, breathe. When the temptation to act on impulse presents yourself, remember, you are not your first thought. You decide what to do with it. This requires training, because the modern world values speed, immediate response, constant intensity. But what really builds, what sustains, what heals, is born from depth, and depth only exists where there is pause. What if self-control is in fact the highest form of freedom? The freedom not to be carried away by emotional tides, not to be lost in what others do or say. The freedom to act by choice, not by reflection. Because at the end of the day, anyone who isn't able to contain himself is always restrained by someone or something, and that's by no means free. Number 7. The rush is the poison of the mind. Do you feel that you are always trying to achieve something that never arrives? As if life was one step ahead, and you, however fast, can never touch it. There is a restlessness that accompanies you. It does not scream, but whispers all the time. You're late. It's like there's an invisible countdown, demanding that you solve everything, understand everything, conquer everything, now. This silent urgency is one of the greatest sources of modern suffering. You wake up and already feel the weight of the day even before you get out of bed. Coffee is taken in haste. Messages are mechanically answered. The commitments accumulate, and you barely breathe. But the body obeys and the mind, intoxicated, pretends to be in control. When, in fact, it is being dragged by a tide of expectations that are not yours. And here comes the lesson that Zenon Decidium has left us, with a clarity that goes through centuries. Time heals what reason cannot. It is a short phrase, but loaded with depth. Because there are pains, confusions, and exhaustions that do not resolve with logic, nor in haste. They only dissolve with time. This silent master, who you try to rush without realizing that you are trying to reap a fruit still green. The agitated mind is an impatient mind. It wants ready answers, definite paths, guarantees. But life does not offer this. Life offers processes, steps, silences. And these spaces which seem empty are just the ones that you need to learn to inhabit. The rush is the poison of the mind, because it takes us out of the present and throws us into an imaginary future, where everything is charging. You should already be there. Haven't you resolved that? Everyone is ahead of you. And these phrases, even if never spoken out loud, are repeated internally as a toxic mantra, which exhausts you even before the day begins. But what if you started to slow down? Not to do less, but to do it with presence. To get out of automatic mode and get into a state of consciousness. To understand that you don't have to run all the time. That there's an immense amount of slow walking. Observing the path, allowing the answers to come at the right time. There is wisdom in not knowing yet. There is beauty in being in the middle of the process. But the rush does not let you see it. It blinds you to everything that is not immediate result. And thus you keep running, but never arrives. It lives doing, but never feels fulfilled. It lives thinking, but never feels peace. Mental detoxification necessarily passes through a reconciliation with time, by understanding that he is not your enemy, but your ally. That he does not charge you haste, but asks you for confidence. And trust is born only when you learn to stay with what is here, now, without requiring you to change ahead of time. Start with simple gestures. Breathe before responding. Give a few seconds between one thought and another. Walk without looking at your phone. Leave blank spaces in your schedule, not to fill later, but to simply be. These voids are no waste of time. They are the fertile soil of the presence. The mind needs pauses to breathe, margins, silence. When everything is full, everything is excessive, and excess gets sick. But when there is space, time comes in. And when time comes in, the healing begins. You don't have to get there first. You just need to get there in one piece. And for that, you need to respect the natural rhythm of life, that flow that cannot be controlled, but can be accompanied. Serenity, with acceptance, with a wisdom that only reveals itself to those who dare to slow down. Because in the end, the real urgency is not to do everything fast. It's to stop living in haste, which can only be lived with presence. Number 8. The restless desire is the motor of dissatisfaction. Have you ever felt that even when you conquer something, the feeling of emptiness comes back soon after? As if every target hit came along with a new hole. First you want a job, then you want recognition, then the increase, stability, more time, more freedom. And yet something remains missing. The cycle of, when I have this, then I will be happy never closes. It's like trying to kill thirst by drinking salt water. Diogenes of Sinope, with firmness, said, "Nothing is sufficient for those enough is little." He knew as few that the human mind, when not educated to stop, transforms any conquest into a starting point for the next desire. And that is exhausting. It is addictive. It is self-destructive. We live in a society that feeds this restlessness as if it were a virtue. You hear that you need ambition, that stagnant is failure, that slowing down is becoming irrelevant. But there is a huge difference between growing with purpose and running without direction. The intoxicated mind does not know the difference. She just wants more. This incessant desire to have more, to be more, to show more, is the fuel of an anxiety that never rests. It is like constantly trying to reach a line on the horizon that moves away to the same extent that you advance. You spend your energy, your hours, your mental health, and when you stop, you realize that you have not left the place. Dissatisfaction is not born from lack. It is born from excess, excessive expectations, comparisons, empty goals. It grows every time you believe that your life needs to be similar to that of others. Each time you measure by patterns that are not even yours. Each time you forget to look at what you already have, because you are too busy wanting what you have not yet achieved. And how do you detox it? Relearning to satisfy yourself, not passively conformed, but with active gratitude, with presence, with awareness of what already inhabits you. Life is not small. What is small is the space you give to what you already possess. Try to stop. Look around. Take a deep breath and ask sincerely, what, among all I have now, would it be enough if I knew how to value? This question can open internal doors that no external conquest can touch. Practice sufficiency as an act of resistance. Refuse excess. Question desire. Embrace what is simple. Discover the pleasure of small things. A warm coffee, taken calmly. A day without pressure. A conversation without haste. An entire silence. Restless desire will always say that something is missing. But the serene soul will know how to answer, it is not missing. It has not yet been realized. Because when you learn to see enough in what you have, abundance ceases to be a distant promise and becomes an inner state. And then something changes. The mind calms down. The heart slows down. Life begins to make sense from the inside out. Not because everything has become perfect, but because you stopped seeking out what was always inside. In the end, it's not about having less or wanting little. It's about wanting with conscience. It's about knowing the time to stop. It's about realizing that maybe, just maybe, the peace you're looking for is in what you already have, and you've always been. Number 9. Let go of the one that was never in your hands. Have you realized how long your life is spent trying to control the uncontrollable? You plan every detail, anticipate every risk, try to predict what others will think, feel, do, and even with every effort, something always escapes. Someone changes their mind. Opportunity does not come. The answer does not come. And anxiety grows, not because something went wrong, but because you believed it was your responsibility to hold what was never in your hands. Ignacio de Rode gave us a key to freedom when he said, "What does not depend on us is indifferent to happiness." This does not mean coldness, emotional indifference, or passive resignation. It means clarity. It means knowing where its reach ends and where life begins, with all its movements independent of its will. The intoxicated mind is a mind that tries to control everything. It confuses effort with assurance. It thinks that if you try harder, think harder, insist more, you can avoid pain, error, unforeseen. But this attempt is like trying to hold the wind with your hands. Tires stays, frustrates, and disconnects you from what can really be done. To let go of what doesn't depend on you is an act of courage. To accept that some situations don't have immediate resolution, that some people won't understand you, that some cycles won't close the way you expected, and yet that doesn't have to trap you. How many times have you charged yourself for things that were out of your control? Have you ever blamed yourself for a result that wasn't entirely up to you? Have you ever lost sleep nights trying to find an explanation for other people's attitudes? That's the root of much of mental exhaustion. And the antidote begins with a simple question. Is this really in my hands? If the answer is no, then to let go is not to give up, it is to let go. It is to remove from the mind a weight that was never yours. It is to redirect your energy to what can be transformed, your attitude, your choice, your interpretation. That, yes, belongs to you. There is a silent peace in accepting the flow of life, in realizing that you are not responsible for everything, nor need to be. That there is wisdom in preparing, but also in allowing. That there is value in trying, but also in letting go. Absolute control is an illusion nourished by fear. Stoicism teaches the opposite, that true strength is in lucid acceptance, not as surrender, but as focus. Because by releasing what does not depend on you, there is more room for what depends on, for what can grow, for what really nourishes you. You don't have to carry everything, nor predict everything, nor save anyone. Your freedom begins at the moment you say with serenity, "It doesn't belong to me." And it follows. Take or presentity, whole. In the end, it is simple. If it is not in your hands, you should not dwell in your mind. Let go and see what remains. That, yes, is yours. Number 10. The clear mind is not full. It is light. Deep down, the human mind does not seek to know everything. It seeks to rest. But in an age of excess information, of voices, of absolute truths, you have been convinced that you need to accumulate more data, more answers, more theories, more certainty. And the more it accumulates, the more it feels lost. Not by the lack of content, but by the lack of silence. The intoxicated mind is not an ignorant mind. It is a saturated mind. Saturated with possibilities, doubts, conflicting paths. It is the paradox of knowledge without peace. You know so much and yet feel that you do not know enough. Because knowledge without clarity does not illuminate, it confuses. And knowledge without direction does not guide. It disorients. Titius Persius wrote, "Wisdom is not in knowing much, but in knowing what is necessary." And it is this distinction that is lacking in times of excess. Because what sets you free is not knowing everything, but discerning what deserves space within you. True wisdom is selective. It does not accumulate, depurates. It does not exhibit, dissolves what is useless. Have you noticed how the lightest moments of your life were not full of explanations, but of presence? How did certain simple conversations mark you more than 1,000 theories? How did a sunset or a shared silence heal what no argument could touch? It's because your mind, like a lake, only reflects sharply when it's quiet. The accumulation of thoughts, however intelligent they may seem, stirs the waters. And where there's constant agitation, there's no vision, only distortion. Therefore, detoxifying your mind is not filling it with new knowledge, but emptying it out of what does not serve you anymore. It is having the courage to release old opinions, to question inherited certainties, to accept that, in many moments, not knowing is what brings you closer to a deep understanding. Clearness is born of reduction. Noise reduction, stimulus, obligation to understand everything. When you stop trying to explain the whole world, you start to feel the world around you. And that feeling is a knowledge that you don't learn in books. You access in silence. Free yourself from the demand to be always informed, always right, always ready. Learn to rest in the humility of those who admit, "I don't know, that I still don't understand," and it's okay. Because the true sage is not what accumulates answers, but what cultivates space to listen. Let your mind breathe. Let it have margin. Let it refuse to be a deposit of everything. Lightness is not born from a full mind, but from a well-cared mind, which filters, which prioritizes, which silences. At the end of this journey, the invitation is simple. Stop dealing with everything. Choose the essentials, and trust that in the simplicity of full attention, there is a wisdom that no encyclopedia can offer. The clear mind is not the one that knows more. It is the one that carries the least. And curiously, it's that light mind that gives you back your life in more depth, because now, finally, there's room to feel it as it is. No exaggeration, no noise, just enough. And enough, when it's true, it's always more than enough. I sincerely hope that this message has been helpful. I sincerely want to congratulate you for coming this far and completing the video. That means that you want to improve as a person. If you like the video, leave your comment. If you don't know what to say, comment gratitude, then I'll know that you've watched until the end. If you're not already on the channel, what are you waiting for? Sign up now and join us. Stoicism is full of teachings like this, which are applicable to our everyday life. Therefore, I encourage you to continue learning about this philosophy. I leave here 2 videos full of Stoic wisdom so you can continue learning. Until next.